Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going deep on the Berlin Wall.
Oh, an excellent choice.
I think it'll be really fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, just thinking about a city physically divided,
Yeah.
families and friends separated for decades.
Right.
And we've got some great excerpts here from this history.com article
Awesome.
that should give us a good
Yeah, it's
foundation.
a fascinating story.
Yeah.
It really is.
So where should we even begin with this?
Well, I think it's important to remember that the Berlin Wall wasn't just a wall, right? It was like this,
Right.
it was like a physical manifestation of the whole Cold War thing.
The Cold War.
Yeah.
Just for anyone listening who might need a quick refresher, that was the
hmm
big ideological struggle between the U.S. and its allies and the
Exact.
Soviet Union
Yeah.
and their bloc,
Yeah.
and it played out all over the world. But the Berlin Wall, man,
Oh, yeah.
that was like the most iconic symbol of that conflict.
Absolutely. To really understand why the wall went up, though, we need to rewind back to the end of World War II.
Okay, so Germany was defeated, right?
Right.
And then they divided it up into these four zones.
Exactly. The Soviets took the East, and the U.S., Great Britain, and France, they took the West.
Okay, so Germany's divided, but what about Berlin? Because wasn't Berlin like right in the middle of the Soviet zone?
Yeah, so Berlin was also divided. You had West Berlin, which was this little island of capitalism right in the heart of communist East Germany.
It's almost like they were trying to provoke them.
It was a really tense situation, yeah.
Yeah.
And I always think about that quote from Nikita Khrushchev.
Oh, yeah.
He said West Berlin was a bone stuck in the Soviet throat.
Yeah.
Really captures the Soviet perspective.
It really does.
Yeah.
bet.
They saw West Berlin as this irritant,
Yeah.
a Western outpost deep within their territory.
Right.
It undermined their authority, and it was this potential escape route for East Germans who weren't happy.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like the Soviets really wanted West Berlin gone.
Oh, absolutely.
But the Allies, they weren't going to just abandon it.
No, not at all.
So that's a recipe for tension, right?
Big time.
And that leads us to the Berlin blockade in 1948.
Exactly. The Soviets, they tried to starve out West Berlin by cutting off all land access. They
Yeah.
really thought they could force the Western powers out.
Wow. Can you imagine? I mean, just cutting off a whole city.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So the U.S. and its allies, they responded with the Berlin airlift.
Yeah.
They flew in everything West Berlin needed: food, medicine, even coal.
It's insane. That's like 2.3 million tons of supplies by air.
It was a huge logistical feat.
Yeah, and a huge propaganda win, I bet.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I mean, it showed the Soviets couldn't just do whatever they wanted.
Exactly. They had to lift the blockade in the end.
But I imagine the tension was still there.
Oh, it was simmering under the surface. And in fact, by the late 1950s, things started to escalate.
Okay, so what happened?
Well, millions of East Germans had already fled to the West, many through Berlin.
Wow, so it wasn't just like a few people.
No, it was a mass exodus. And it was a huge problem for the Soviets.
Yeah, I mean, why were they so desperate to leave?
Well, life under communist rule was tough. The economy was struggling, and there wasn't a lot of freedom.
So they saw West Berlin as like,
A beacon of hope,
yeah,
a chance at a better life.
and Berlin was the easiest place to cross.
Yeah, it was basically a loophole in the Iron Curtain.
So the Soviets had to do something, right?
They did. They couldn't let this continue. They were losing face, losing their workforce, and it was a direct challenge to their authority. And that's how we get to 1961 and the Berlin Wall.
Okay, so that's where it all starts.
Yeah, but before the wall went up, there was this crazy standoff at Checkpoint Charlie.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that.
It was like something out of a movie.
Really?
Yeah, U.S. and Soviet tanks facing each other down.
Wow, that must have been terrifying.
Oh, absolutely. It was a reminder of how quickly things could escalate.
Yeah, and then just a few months later, the wall goes up.
August 12th, 1961, a record number of East Germans fled to West Berlin.
Wow, so they knew it was coming.
And that night, Khrushchev gave the East German government permission to close the border permanently.
Wow.
And within 2 weeks, barbed wire, then concrete, a wall dividing the city.
It's hard to imagine families and friends just suddenly separated like that.
It was a chaotic time.
Yeah.
I mean, our source mentions this woman, Frieda Schultz. She had to climb out her apartment window.
Wow.
Yeah, her building ended up on the East German side after they put the wall up.
That's insane.
Yeah, a city transformed overnight.
So what happened to the people who wanted to cross after the wall went up?
Well, a lot of them didn't give up. The desire for freedom is strong, and despite the risks, people still tried to escape.
Yeah, but the wall was heavily guarded, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Shoot to kill orders for anyone trying to cross illegally.
It's hard to believe people would still risk it.
But they did, and some of their stories are incredible.
Okay, well, I definitely want to hear about those.
Oh, yeah, we've got some amazing ones.
Okay, well, let's take a quick break, and then when we come back, we can dive into those stories.
Sounds good.
Okay, so before the break, we were talking about all those people trying to escape to the West.
Yeah, it's really incredible, some of the stories.
Yeah, I'm ready to hear them.
Well, one that always stands out is Conrad Schumann.
Oh, yeah, the border guard.
Yeah, just 2 days after the wall went up.
Wow.
He jumped over the barbed wire right in front of the cameras.
Yeah, I think I've seen that picture.
It's iconic, right?
Yeah, it really captures that moment.
Just this young guy risking everything for freedom.
It makes you wonder what was going through his head.
I know, it's hard to imagine.
Yeah, so were there other people who tried to escape like that?
Oh, yeah. All sorts of crazy attempts.
Really?
People were desperate.
Yeah.
Like Harry Deterling, this train engineer,
I think I've heard of him.
he stole a whole steam train.
Wait, what?
Yeah, and just plowed through the last station in East Berlin.
With passengers.
25 of them.
That's it's like something out of a movie.
It is, right?
I mean, talk about a daring escape.
Oh, yeah, he had to time it perfectly.
I bet. And did it work? I mean, did he make it?
He did.
Wow.
Everyone on board got to West Berlin.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's an incredible story.
So it sounds like even as they were fortifying the wall,
Right.
people were still finding ways through.
Oh, yeah, there was Wolfgang Engels, for example.
Or was he?
He was a soldier.
Okay.
Actually, he helped build the initial barbed wire fence.
Oh, wow.
But then he became disillusioned with the regime,
I see.
so he stole a tank.
He stole a tank
Yeah.
to escape.
And rammed it right through the wall.
Seriously.
Yeah, he got shot twice doing it.
Oh, my God.
But he made it to West Berlin.
Wow.
Yeah, so you can see people were really determined.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when freedom's on the line,
Right.
you do what you have to do.
And for the East German authorities, it must have been a constant headache.
Yeah, I mean, did they ever think about, like, giving up on the wall?
Well, publicly, they always maintained it was necessary.
Right, to protect their state.
Yeah, from Western influence.
But I bet behind closed doors.
I'm sure there were debates.
Yeah.
But it did work. For a while, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it did stop the mass exodus.
Right, and it sent a message.
Yeah, I mean, it became this global symbol.
Oh, absolutely. The Berlin Wall was like the defining image of the Cold War.
And all that international pressure.
Yeah, that definitely contributed to its eventual fall.
But it wasn't just that, was it? I mean, things were changing in the Soviet Union, too, right?
Absolutely. That's a huge part of the story.
Gorbachev coming to power, glasnost, perestroika.
Exactly. It was a whole new era.
Yeah, so how did that affect East Germany? I mean, were they on board with all those reforms?
Well, not everyone was happy about it.
Yeah.
The East German leader, Erich Honecker, he was a hardliner.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading about him.
Yeah, he resisted the changes for as long as he could.
But the writing was on the wall, so to speak.
You could say that again.
Yeah, I mean, the economy was in trouble. People were protesting.
It was just a matter of time.
So what was the final straw? I mean, what actually caused the wall to come down?
You know, it's actually kind of a funny story.
Oh,
It was almost an accident.
really? Tell me more.
So in November 1989, with all these protests going on, the East German government, they decided to ease travel
Oh,
restrictions.
wow, big change.
Yeah, but the way they announced it,
What happened?
well, this official, Günter Schabarsky, he was giving a press conference,
Oh,
and he's reading this statement about the new rules,
yeah,
and someone asks him when they take effect,
okay.
and he kind of fumbles with his papers, and then he says, as far as I know, it takes effect immediately, without delay.
He just said that,
Yeah,
live on TV,
pretty much.
and no one stopped him.
Nope, it was broadcast all over East Germany.
Wow, that's wild.
And then people just started showing up at the wall.
Demanding to cross.
Yeah, thousands of them.
So what did the guards do?
They were totally unprepared.
Yeah.
They had no orders to use force.
And with all those people.
I mean, what could
Yeah.
they do?
Yeah.
So that night, the wall was open.
Just like that.
It was an incredible moment.
I bet, I mean, after all those years.
Yeah, it was the end of an era,
And the beginning of a new one.
the reunification of Germany.
But that's a whole other story, right?
Oh, yeah, merging two countries like that.
Yeah, it couldn't have been easy.
Not at all.
So what were some of the challenges they faced?
Well, for one, the economies were vastly different.
Right. I mean, East Germany had been under communist rule for so long.
Exactly, and that had a huge impact.
Okay, so let's dive into that. Where do we begin? Where do we begin?
Well, like you said, the economies were vastly different.
Right. East Germany had been under communist rule for decades.
Yeah, and that really left its mark.
So what did they do? I mean, how do you even start to merge two economies like that?
Well, it was a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
There were a lot of different approaches.
Okay.
But one of the most immediate things they did was currency conversion.
Oh, right. They had different currencies.
Yeah, so they replaced the East German mark with the Deutschmark.
Okay, but that must have been a shock for people in the East,
Right.
right? I mean, going from one system to another like that?
It was definitely a big adjustment.
Yeah.
I mean, suddenly prices were different, wages were different.
And was it a one-to-one conversion?
Well, not exactly.
Oh,
They tried to find a balance.
okay.
They wanted to give East Germans a fair start,
Yeah.
but they also had to think about the stability of the new German economy.
Right, so it couldn't be too disruptive.
Exactly.
So what were some of the other challenges they faced? I mean, beyond just the economics.
Well, you have to remember that East Germany had been a very different kind of society.
Yeah, I mean, they were cut off from the West for so long.
Yeah. Right, so there were cultural differences, different values.
And suddenly they're all part of the same country.
It was a lot to process
I bet.
for both sides, really.
Yeah, I mean, were there any, like, tensions between East Germans and West Germans?
Well, sure, there were some stereotypes and prejudices.
I mean, that's understandable, right?
Yeah, I mean, they had been living in separate worlds for so long.
Right, so they have these different experiences, different perspectives.
Exactly, and sometimes that led to misunderstandings.
So how do they overcome those challenges? I mean, how do they finally come together as one nation?
Well, it was a long process.
Yeah.
And it's still ongoing in some ways.
Really?
Yeah, but I think one of the most important things was communication.
Okay.
People had to talk to each other, share their experiences, try to understand where the other side was coming from.
Right, so it's about building bridges, not walls.
Exactly, and it wasn't always easy.
I bet.
But over time, people started to see each other as fellow Germans, not as East or West.
That's amazing. I mean, it's a testament to the human spirit, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, our ability to overcome division, to find common ground.
It's really inspiring.
It is. And I think the story of the Berlin Wall, it's not just about Germany, you know.
What do you mean?
Well, it's a reminder that no matter how divided we may seem,
Right.
there's always hope.
There is.
Hope for reconciliation, hope for a better future.
Yeah, I think that's a great takeaway.
Yeah, so thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the history of the Berlin Wall.
It's been my pleasure.
It really has been fascinating, and I think we've all learned a lot.
Definitely.
So until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those walls from closing in.
Couldn't have said it better myself.